A friend of mine is a Donald Trump supporter and has been since Trump announced his candidacy last summer for the presidency of the United States. My friend, on the other hand, is also a very conservative Roman Catholic, conservative in his religious faith, conservative in his politics. In fact, many years ago, he was working on a campaign for a state senate campaign, and he was telling me he went to a forum where his candidate, also a Roman Catholic and a fellow who was married and settled down with a nice family, and was the Republican candidate, and they sat down at a forum with two other candidates. One was a Democrat who was looking forward to marrying his husband, and the other was a libertarian who used to be a man but was now a woman, and he was just appalled that his candidate, who was much more traditional, was seated between these two other candidates. So this morning, I emailed him. There's a new commercial out from the Ted Cruz campaign. Cruz is criticizing Donald Trump's support, which happened yesterday morning. Trump was doing a town hall meeting with MSDNC. And he was asked about men who think they are women using girls' bathrooms. And Trump said people should be able to do that. He even said that his friend Bruce Lynn Jenner could come to Trump Tower and use whatever bathroom that Bruce Lynn wanted to use. Well, I sent this commercial. Cruz campaign wasted no time in getting this out. I sent the commercial on to my friend this morning, and the one thing that really bothers me about the Donald Trump supporters is I get a reply that says, doesn't matter. Well, wait a minute. Look, he's just said he's got no problem with this. You do. Why do you still support him? Doesn't matter. Trump's going to go to Washington and show him. He's going to smack Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid. Well, Reid will be retired by then, but he'll smack these guys right in the face. Doesn't matter. Going to build a wall. He's going to make the military stronger. He's going to make sure you get all of your Social Security benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, despite all of the debts the country has. Doesn't matter. Do you get the impression after a while that these people are smoking crack? 9 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. The Cruz campaign not only issued a commercial about this shortly after it all came down. Cruz himself is absolutely shocked by Trump's response that some grown men can claim that they are women and now share bathrooms. Now remember, Cruz has two little girls who may periodically have to go in and use a public restroom.
And Donald on television this morning said, gosh, he thought that men should be able to go into the girls' bathroom if they want to. Now, let me ask you, have we gone stark raving nuts?
Great question. Unfortunately, Mr. Cruz is not going to be the nominee by the looks of things. And it appears that a lot of people out there who have claimed fealty to conservative values and traditional values for many, many years, what they really mean is they just want someone to, as I said earlier, just go down to Washington and sock someone right in the nose. And somehow that's going to solve all the problems we have. Trump, you would have thought, would have started at some point maybe walking this back. It didn't happen. In fact, he appeared last night with Sean Hannity on the Fox News channel, and he doubled down on the very issue.
We have to take care of everybody, frankly. And North Carolina, which is a great place, which I won, by the way. I love North Carolina. And they have a law, and it's a law that, unfortunately is causing them some problems. And I fully understand if they want to go through, but they are losing business, and they are having a lot of people come out against. With me, I look at it differently. A community, whether it's North Carolina or local communities, really, they should be involved. We have so many big issues to be thinking about, Sean. We have ISIS to worry about. We have bringing trade back. We have rebuilding our military. But I think that local communities and states should make the decision. And I feel very strongly about that. The federal government should not be involved.
In other words, let the state decide, let local community decide, kind of like your position on education, give it back to the states.
Yeah, let them decide. Absolutely.
And to some degree, that last segment may have gotten him off the hook, because that's exactly what Raul Labrador told us on Wednesday when he was on the show with us, that he's looking to protect institutions of higher education, not necessarily looking to protect the bakers and the his religious liberty bill. But there is, you're saying to yourself, these two things are not related. Well, yes, they are, because the notion that men should be using the potties with their children does tie in considerably to religious morality as well, because we aren't pagans. There's a reason that we divide, and men are men and women are women, and we do things in that particular way. But what really galled me about this was Trump saying, well, it's cost them a lot in North Carolina. Is it always about dollars and cents? Is there nothing else in his life? Does the man really have no other positions other than a dollar sign? And somehow really believes that your entire makeup in life is about how big a pile of money you've put away? Oh, it's going to cost North Carolina a great deal. Well, sometimes taking a principled stand is costly. Yes, that's true, Mr. Trump. And I would hope as President of the United States that you might be able to do that once in a while. It's 8:12. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Telephone number to reach the program, 736-0300, 736-0300. It's 54. On our way to 79 today, but clouds and a rainy weekend and much colder ahead. You're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. This just shows another notch in the old poll where Trump has shown his liberal side, but yet the followers that claim that they are conservative, I don't care. And, we're trying to save the country and bring it back to what it was. And unless we try to do that, what's the sense? I mean, Sean Hannity is one of the ones I quit listening to because he kept saying that he's neutral. But if you listen to him all day, if you don't think he's pro-Trump, you're not listening. It's just a blatant deal. If Trump was a Democrat, he would have been after him like he was on Obama.
Right.
And he's
right.
not. So, it's just sad. It's sad to see our country going through this. I mean, it is not discrimination. If they were born with certain genitalia, then that's where they should go. And they're saying that we're discriminating against them. Again, it's one person that wants to get into a restroom versus 20 or 30 that doesn't want to, but yet we're the ones discriminating.
Well said. Thank you much for the telephone call, sir. 736-0300. I look at this and I realize there are a lot of people who claim to be conservatives and then ended up supporting Trump. There are the principled conservatives, as I mentioned, who they're the intellectuals who are so despised, I guess, by so many people. But they sit around and they talk about free markets and believe if you just removed a lot of the regulation we had, things would boom, and that we could restore a lot of. And then there are the conservatives who are, again, the religious conservatives, and they adhere very much to the teachings that they learned growing up, perhaps in their churches, and they're mocked, of course, roundly on various campuses across the country and throughout life. And how come you're not engaging in group sex? Ha 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 ha! Must be something wrong with you. Ha 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 ha! And you realize that there's that intelligent form of conservatism. Then there's the other form of conservatism, and it's witnessed in places. My hometown would be a good example. 2 traffic lights, 1,700 people. You go into the local diner. I went in there many times with my parents. God bless them, they're long gone, but the situation is still the same. And then there's the conservatives who sit in those places, and they sit there and they tell you, them colored people are getting too much. And then they call them conservatives because some black fellow out there is perceived to be getting away with all sorts of benefits. And it's really all about the color of someone else. It's not necessarily about the intellectual argument and all of it. And we have some of them we even hear on the radio here. That, to me, is the core of Trump's support. I've said it all along. I do not believe that all Trump supporters are racists, but some of Trump's supporters, if you're a racist, you likely support Trump. That's about the best way I think we could describe that situation. And those people are only conservatives because they think somebody else is getting more than their fair share, and that we've got to stop that, and that has to come to an end. But they don't really have any evidence and perhaps in some of these programs they're absolutely right, but they can't cite any evidence to back it up. They're just going a lot. My parents, we would go to the zoo once in a while. It was a good long drive from home. We growing from a small town into the old, what was called the Buffalo Zoo. There were no buffalo there. It's the name of a city. We would go there to the zoo now and then. In order to get to the zoo, though, you had to go through a really bad part of town. And my parents would sit there and they would just complain and complain and complain about all of these shabby houses. But look, they all drive Cadillacs. As if, and there's that inherent prejudice in all of that. My parents were very much conservative voters. Again, because they believed somebody else out there was getting more than their fair share or unfairly receiving a benefit. And that's why they were conservatives and they didn't like liberal Democrats because, as my dad used to say, he had been a Kennedy supporter in 1960, but not much longer after that, and he became very conservative. And one day I asked him, what he had against Kennedy, and he said, because he gave the country to the, I will not fill in the rest. But he was a product of his generation. I'm not condemning him. I'm just telling you I think there's a great deal of that's currently going on in this country. Trump, I think, has some value in the sense that he is talking about jobs that are hemorrhaging overseas. He is talking, of course, about actually trying to limit the sieve that is our southern border. God bless him for that. And I think that he's right when he says if we're going to go to war, let's be a little bit more cautious about when and where we go to war. All of those are wonderful things. And I think that he's brought these issues up, and I think that they needed to be brought up because everyone, even the intellectual folks out there, can also understand we can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them. It hasn't worked. I'm just telling you that the man really doesn't have any sort of moral compass. Again, he's railing against North Carolina because it might cost them money. It has nothing to do with, what may happen to the little girls in the bathroom. It's all about the money. It's as bad as the liberal member of the Seattle City Council who said when they passed the law there to allow these grubby 35-year-old men to go in there, and some of them, I'm not saying that everybody is a pervert, but this is going to allow perverts to have free reign in these situations. And when someone brought that up to her, she said, well, that's just something that we'll have to live with. They are willing to sacrifice 3-year-old girls so that they don't hurt somebody's feelings, a man who wants to wear a dress or a woman who wants to wear the combat boots. Coming up on 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. So Trump is no conservative. Let's be clear about that. And all these people who say, well, he's redefining the Republican Party, he certainly is. I will, that's obvious. But don't ever confuse the man with a conservative. We've got a break coming up. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 55. Do want to point out that we have a guest coming up just after 9 o'clock news. Leon Mills, of course, he's a Twin Falls County Commissioner, running for re-election. He'll join us. He'll spend about 15 minutes with us in the next hour. Hope you can stick around. I want to point out, when it comes to a general election, if it's Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I'm supporting Donald Trump, despite the fact that I think he's a seriously flawed candidate. She's far worse. I'm just telling you right now, I don't see how anyone in their right mind could, well, we're talking liberals. A little later in the program, if I get a chance, we'll show you that a lot of them clearly aren't in their right mind. I've got audio from a video from Media Research Center where a reporter visited a demonstration in Washington called Democracy Spring, and some of the things coming out of the mouths of liberals, oh, man. The elevator isn't going to the top floor. 2 beers short of a six-pack. Not the sharpest tools in the shed. Not the brightest bulbs in the constellation. That's how we probably bring that up. Clinton was in Philadelphia yesterday where she said she supported a tax on soda pop. Pop in some parts of the country, soda in Philadelphia. Where I was growing up, soda was what you got from an Arm & Hammer box. Pop was what you drank out of a bottle or can. She said she will support a tax on soda pop in Philadelphia to help fund the city schools because they've ran the schools into the ground and figure that if they just dump some more money in, of course, that everything will just be fine. I do want to point out we have a guest coming up just after 9 o'clock this morning. That's Leon Mills. He is a Twin Falls County Commissioner. He'll be spending some time with us and just outlining his case for re-election. Of course, he's involved in a primary, as are, I guess, a great many people who are running for county commissioner throughout the Magic Valley. I have a quick reminder for folks. Yes, yesterday may have been the hottest day we'll see for the next few weeks, but that doesn't mean that we're done. We're going to have some hot weather, obviously, May, June, July, August, and September. And we've been recommending Tint Lady as a means of trying to control that heat that comes through your windows on those really hot, sunny days in the middle of summer. Tint Lady has a new address at 127 Filer Avenue. That's at the corner of Washington and Filer in the city of Twin Falls. And you can get a free estimate from Tint Lady. They'll help cut down on that heat convection, and that can save you money when it comes to overworking your air conditioner. In fact, you'll be able to keep that air conditioner humming at a much lower level if you actually get window tints. Telephone number 736-8469 or go online tintladyidaho.com. This is a locally owned and operated business, nearly a quarter century in Twin Falls. Monday through Friday, the hours 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday by appointment only, closed on Sundays. And remember, don't squint, get tint. Hillary Clinton, this is another reason why I would support Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Not only is she in favor of finding ways to tax what you drink so you can fund bad education systems and pay off the teachers' unions around the country, she also has some rather strange ideas when it comes to the Second Amendment.
We have the epidemic of gun violence, which is stalking our country from small towns to large cities. No place is immune. And when, on average, 90 people a day are killed by guns, which adds up to 33,000 people a year, we have to be absolutely disciplined in not becoming insensitive and indifferent to those losses. This weekend in Philadelphia, you had 12 shootings. You had 4 people murdered, including a 4-year-old girl. You had a policeman shot. That was just one weekend in one American city. We have just too many guns on the streets, in our homes, in our neighborhoods. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk in this campaign, in the primary campaign, about the power of certain interests in our country. And we do have a bunch of powerful interests, make no mistake about it. But there is no more powerful lobby than the gun lobby.
Now, I guess she's going to be going door to door as president, trying to confiscate your firearms. There's an old line that was made famous by a group of Spartans at Thermopylae, and it's Molin Lobby, which translates as "come and take them." That when the Greeks were told, "throw down your weapons and surrender to the Persians," the response was, "come and take them." Did not make the Persians happy, and the Persians had to pay a heavy price for that. So here she is speaking in this situation, and her true colors are really shining through on all of this. But she says in Philadelphia, you had 12 shootings over the weekend. Philadelphia has not had a Republican as mayor since I don't know when, maybe back in the 1940s, maybe before that. And Philadelphia has very strict, just like every other big Democrat-controlled city in the country, has very strict firearm regulations. If you go to Republican cities, on the other hand, you don't see anywhere near the gun violence. Why is that? Well, because people can defend themselves, and some crook coming down the street, and we're going to probably actually see a drop. The liberals here in Idaho, the handful of them that are here, keep complaining about the new SB 1389 that takes effect in a matter of weeks now, which will allow, of course, concealed carry without a permit. But you realize what happens in that situation. Some criminal who tries to approach you as you're leaving the mall or somewhere like that has no idea if you're packing heat. And if they have to assume that you are, it's going to make them think twice about committing a crime. But Hillary Clinton realizes by saying that all of the gun control folks around the country, the confiscators, there's a new line. I heard it used by Chris Matthews the other night on MSDNC. And he even brought it up. He said it's no longer gun control. There's another line they're using. They're trying to switch the language, just like when they ran the word liberal into the ditch, and they all said, no, I'm a progressive. Yeah, as if they somehow their views imply progress, which obviously we don't see a lot of. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Trump did say one interesting thing. We'll get to that in just a few minutes about money. Donald Trump, we mentioned that he thinks that when it comes to money, that trumps all morality. Speaking of money, though, Trump, he's all over geographically the political map. First, he says it's okay that men who think they are women can use the ladies' potty. Yet, on the other hand, now he was among the only Republicans, I guess, to criticize the decision about Harriet Tubman going on the $20 bill and replacing Andy Jackson. Now, I worked at a radio station, my second full-time radio job, but where I really learned the business was in a small town, and we were about 2 blocks away from a cemetery where Harriet Tubman happened to be buried. And she was a gun owner, and she was a Republican. Of course, Republicans in that era might have been a little different than some of the Republicans today, but I don't think that very much. Where Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, not only did he uproot the Cherokee and march them halfway across the country, and many of them died during that move, and these had been good American allies. They'd been, some of them had fought with the U.S. military and alongside Jackson. And I've got to tell you, when you hear this story, remember that Jackson defied the Supreme Court. He was president. He was not emperor. He also, putting his picture on money, this is the guy who destroyed the Bank of the United States, Biddle's Bank. You may remember the story from history class. So it's odd that there are people who are actually making a lot of noise about this. This is not one of those, it's not the hill that I would choose to die on if I'm a conservative or a Republican. 8:35, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. If you'd like to reach our program today, the telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. Just a reminder, next Wednesday between 8:30 and 9 o'clock here on this program, it's Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. We'll have one of the medical professionals dropping by from the office. They're located in Twin Falls on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office. We should also note, of course, this past week we talked about allergies and the huge spike in allergies now that we are into spring. And they've been doing a lot of treatment for people who are suffering from allergies at Tripp Family Medicine, where they are looking for new patients. Unlike a lot of places that are all booked up, they're still taking new patients at Tripp Family Medicine. It's a growing practice, in fact, growing by leaps and bounds. And they can see you on the very same day, often, that you have an issue. So if you had a bad allergy reaction to some of the lilacs that are popping up around your home, and you really needed to see someone fast, they could get you into the office and give you the treatment you need, so you can get a good night's sleep afterwards and get back to work and get back to business. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. 8:36, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Here's an argument being made by a conservative writer at Washington Examiner by the name of Philip Klein. And he said that Trump is going to actually hurt his opportunities with black voters in this country by being opposed to Tubman being on the $20 bill. And Klein says it's time for Republicans to stop shooting themselves in their own feet in these situations. Trump derided the decision as, quote, pure political correctness, unquote. And the writer goes on to say, he cites exactly what I did, that he forcibly removed the Cherokees from their home in Georgia, where they were living. They were dressing as Europeans and had their own villages and towns. And as we say, the Supreme Court sided with them, and Jackson ignored the court. The episode, the writer says, illustrates some of the broader challenges facing Republicans seeking to win over black voters. But here's what I found that was interesting. He says, a Pew Research Center report released last year found a third of black Americans would prefer a smaller government with fewer services to a larger government with more services. That may be less than a third, but consider Republicans usually only get about 10% of that vote. Well, if you raise that to just 20%, you're going to win elections. And if 1/3 of black America says that we need a smaller government, start working with them and not against them. 56. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Well, talk about progressives, Bill. Out west of Ketchum, Idaho up here, they found 45 head of dead elk killed by wolves in one spot from last winter. And the Blaine County commissioners and Michelle Stinnett have the guts to blame it on the elk trampling itself in the stampede.
Right, I heard that story. Thank you much for the telephone call. You're next. You're on the air.
In the stampede.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your comment about the Indians being forced off their lands. You know, this is basically these progressive people clear back then, wanted the Indian lands, and so they had to basically destroy a lot of their culture, and in order to point out, even though the evidence was overwhelmingly that there were Indians had a highly civilized culture, certainly some of them were savages, but they were ruled as savages And so this was denied them constitutional rights and forced the Indians off of their lands. And the Cherokees is just part of the Trail of Tears that took place all over this country in order to steal the Indian lands. And of course, they killed off the buffalo or the bison by the jillions in order to take away their food and their housing. And then they were totally dependent on the government. And I've always said, if you think the federal government is going to take care of you, just look what they've done for the Indians.
Good point. Thank you much for the telephone call. Yeah, look at the poverty and the alcoholism and the suicide rates on the reservations. Ask yourself, are we all headed for that if the government takes over our lives and we all become wards of the state? 20 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.